This video is brought to you by Ohuhu. I'll be sharing all my hints and tips that will be really useful if you're new to alcohol markers or are thinking about getting started. I usually start by sketching in my iPad, and I wanted to show you how I transfer my illustrations to my sketchbook. If you've already got your sketches in your sketchbook, then feel free to use the timestamps to skip ahead. I want to transfer this drawing into my sketchbook, so I need this carbon paper and some Ohuhu sketchbooks. Because they're designed specifically to use with alcohol markers, they really reduce the pen's bleeding or the paper ripping as you apply layer upon layer of ink. Every sketchbook comes with this sheet that you can place in between the pages just to protect the page below. So let's get tracing. I thought I'd show you another way to trace from your iPad. If your paper is thin enough, you can use the iPad as a light box, allowing the sketch to shine through for you to trace. Instead, I'm going to print this drawing off onto normal printer paper, then I can use the carbon paper to transfer that drawing into my sketchbook. As you can see, my printer nozzles need completely cleaning out. The ink has dried up, so the print has come out all patchy, but that really doesn't matter when tracing. You do not need a fancy printer to do this. I start by placing the carbon paper shiny side down. Then I'm just going to draw around my printed image, and the carbon paper will transfer that drawing onto the page in my sketchbook. As this video has been brought to you by Ohuhu, they are giving you a 10% discount across their website. I'll leave the discount code and all the details in the description below, and I urge you to make use of it because I have fallen in love with these pens and I think you're going to love them too. You can also access up-to-date discount codes via my partnership programs page on my website, just in case you're finding this video after the code expires. Remove the carbon paper and we should see the pencil lines below. I really love this technique, and carbon paper is so affordable. Before I start using any of my fine liners or alcohol markers, I want to get rid of as much of the graphite as possible. I can erase pretty much all of it and leave just a really faint line that is enough for me to see it clearly when I'm doing my line art. Doing this just prevents the graphite from smudging into the markers when I get to colouring. Before I get started on the main piece, I like to do a little warm-up sketch, and I thought I'd use this opportunity to show you the two methods of adding line art with the marker pens. Having line art is totally a style preference, but it's something I've always added to my digital art. With the umbrella on the left, I drew the line art first and then coloured in with the markers. These are Ohuhu fine liners and they don't smudge at all, so I prefer doing it this way, but you can colour the piece first, like I've shown on the right, and do the line art after. There's no right or wrong here, and they end up pretty much giving the same results. So like I said, these are Ohuhu fine liners. For this illustration, I'm going to be using the 0.3 and the 0.2 nib. For me, a big pro to using the fine liner first is that if I was to make a mistake on the line art and need to start over, if it's a really drastic mistake, I'm not having to redo all the alcohol marker stage as well, whereas the alcohol markers are a lot more forgiving if you make any mistakes because they can be blended or hidden. Those are my warm-up sketches complete. I wouldn't usually draw two of the same thing, but I thought it would be a good comparison to show you the different methods. If you want to see a more in-depth video on how I do my line art with these fine liners, please let me know in the comments below and I'll add that video to my list of ideas. Now that I've finished my line art, I need to choose my colours. This is a set of 216 colours. It comes in this really handy carry bag, and with it you get these colour sample pages to fill in. Each pen is colour coded, and you can use the chart as a reference when picking your colours. The colours on the ends of the pens aren't always a perfect match to the ink once it's dried, so I always go to my colour chart when deciding on colours, instead of looking at the colour on the end of the pen. So this is my digital drawing for my All Things Cozy sticker sheet. It's part of a set of sticker sheets that I'm going to be launching in my Kickstarter on May 1st, and because I've already done the hard work in choosing my colour palette, I thought I'd use this as a reference for colouring in this traditional art piece. And if you're watching this video way after my Kickstarter has ended, you can find these products in my shop once I've reopened it, if we get fully funded, that is. Each pen comes with a broad tip that looks like this, and a brush tip, which is this one. I love using the brush tip for colouring and blending, but the broad tip could be really useful for creating sharp lines. It totally depends on your style. The reason I'm choosing my colours now and not picking them as I go is because you want to work fairly quickly when it comes to blending. I don't mean that you have to rush, but you don't want one colour to completely dry before using a second colour to blend. So I like to have my colours ready to hand for each step. When colouring, I start in sections, and after making sure I'm keeping inside my line art, I then pull the pen from left to right in a sweeping motion like this. Although the nib is thick and you can fill a large space, it's also got a really fine point at the end, which means you won't have any trouble getting into those tight corners. When working with the pens, use light strokes instead of pushing down too hard. This is because the pens are highly pigmented and pressing too hard might leave an uneven coverage. If you're pressing lightly and building upon each layer, you don't need to worry about it looking patchy. The ink will dry and leave a smooth, even colour. You can see that even though I'm colouring over the fine liner, there's absolutely no bleeding or smudging. As you can see, despite the sketchbook paper being super thick, you still get a bleed through to the other side, which is why it's important to have this insert to stop it going onto the page below. Ohuhu have just sent me their innovative new sketchbook that is completely bleed through proof, which makes it double-sided. I'll leave a link for it below, but I'll also be doing another video using that sketchbook really soon, so make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you don't miss it. Because my illustration is separated into sections by my line art, I'm not doing a huge amount of blending at this stage. I use a slightly darker colour to show where the shadow would be, which is why it's great having 216 colours. You are not stuck for choice. Now, this is just my style, but I really love to do cell shading. If it's something you'd like to learn more about, let me know in the comments and I'll do a tutorial on this. But in case you don't know, cell shading is where you add a shadow with a bold line rather than a blended shadow. Studio Ghibli is a great example of this. You can see an example on screen and I just love the effect. The great thing about these pens is that you can build up the layers and add these bold lines without it merging into the colour below. And as you can see here, you can really get into tight spaces because the tip has such a fine point at the end. I like putting quite contrasting colours side by side, which I think works well with the line art separating the two. If I was to blend these colours, I'd start from light to dark, merging the two in the middle. You can also blend from dark to light, but because it's easier to add dark colour than it is to make a colour lighter, I'd suggest starting with light to dark and building up the layers as you go. I don't know about you, but I really thought alcohol markers would be like those felt tip pens you use in school. You know, the ones that rip the paper, make it wrinkly, don't blend, and dry out super fast? Well, I couldn't have been more wrong. These pens are designed with the artist in mind and they're so affordable compared to other brands. You can choose from different sets, but I really love this one because so far I have not struggled to find a colour I want. Now I just need the bamboo display case so I can look at all the pretty colours whenever I'm working in my studio. And don't forget to subscribe to find out more useful art hints, tips and shop updates. Okay, see you next time.